Hello and welcome. So amid everything that's happened this year, all the upheaval, the pandemic, all the craziness, we've had some brilliant albums released. I've done a lot of work outside and I've taken my phone and a speaker with me, so I've had plenty of time to really absorb some of the music that's come out and some of the albums that I might have missed from the past. So I'm going to have a look at my favourite albums this year so far. There's a couple more still to come and I'll mention them at the end. So in no order whatsoever, the first one would have to be Randy California, The Euro-American Years. This is a 6 CD set, 105 songs in all, and it's pretty damn amazing. For those who don't know, Randy California was the front man for the band Spirit for many years, and in effect, it was his band. In his career, Randy had a few attempts at going out there and performing as a solo artist, but for the most part, you couldn't really tell the difference between his work with Spirit and his work as a solo artist. The Euro-American Years covers the period from 1979 to 1983. During that period, Randy released his second solo album, Euro-American. The whole of that album, Euro-American, is included on this set. But as was the case throughout his career, he recorded dozens and dozens of songs. Some were just demos, some were half formed, and some were ready to go onto a record. The studio material here is just stunning. You've got pop, you've got pop rock, you've got surf pop, you've got rock and roll, prog rock, heavy rock, soft rock, synth pop, and if you took the best of those tracks and you condensed them into a double album, you would have one of the best double albums you will ever hear. So this is 6 CDs. It was released back in 2006 as 4 CDs, but this time they've added some more live stuff and I think maybe one more studio track. So now you get a bunch of tracks from Spirit live from 1980 to 1981, the whole of a gig from 1981 from Louis in Queensborough, South Carolina, 1979 from Ayr, Scotland as the Randy California Band when he was supporting Ian Gillan on tour, 1982 part of Randy's solo set at the Glastonbury Festival, and the complete set from Randy's solo spot at Reading 1982, which was a bit of a showstopper. That's worth the price of admission alone, because that day at Reading he just blew our minds. So I think the whole thing retails at about 27 quid, which is what, $35 US dollars, and it's worth every penny. Album number 2, On Sunset by Paul Weller. I'm not the biggest Paul Weller fan in the world, but saying that, there's a good few of his tracks that I absolutely love. You Do Something to Me, Brand New Start, that's entertainment. If I'm making up a playlist, they're always there. So he's an artist I've kind of dipped in and out of over the years, and by no means do I know all of Paul Weller's music. But On Sunset turned up in the middle of a heat wave, and it's perfect summer music. Just full of cool grooves, brilliant melodies, great songs, and great musicianship. I have a friend who's a DJ in Thailand, and he played this endlessly throughout the summer. It goes from the ABBA-like Mirrorball, the cool funk of Baptiste, the title track On Sunset, where you can almost feel that LA heat. Equanimity could well have been written by Ray Davies. Earthling, with its uncanny David Bowie phrasing, could be the best song that Bowie never wrote. Paul has gathered together a bunch of exceptional musicians and provided great songs, and it's all taken off brilliantly. Paul says in an interview recently that he's well into making the next album. On Sunset is an exceptional album. Next up, Homegrown, Neil Young. One thing us music fans just love is a lost or forgotten album. It fires up the senses and you just got to hear it. Homegrown has been shelved for 45 years and finally got its release this year, 2020. Recorded somewhere between the classic On the Beach and Tonight's the Night. Young says He shelved it because it was just too personal. It was too painful. He was reeling from a really painful breakup from Carrie Snodgrass, his partner back then. Is it any good? Yes, it most definitely is. Neil Young has always seemed like the sort of musician who can write a great album or two before breakfast. But back then in the 70s, it seemed like almost every week there were rumours of a new album. Of the 12 tracks on Homegrown, Separate Ways, Try, Mexico, Kansas, We Don't Smoke It Anymore, Vacancy and Florida, they're the ones that haven't been released before. The other tracks, White Line, Love Is a Rose, Little Wing, Star of Bethlehem and Homegrown have all turned up on other recordings. Though most of the tracks, if my memory serves me rightly, Neil has played live in concert over the years. Homegrown is an excellent record. It's a kind of return to the country rock of Harvest, but this time it's raw, ragged, unruly. It wears its heart very much on its sleeve. But you know, somehow Neil pulls it all together. Sometimes it seems to be teetering on the edge of chaos, but a bit like Neil's guitar playing, but he holds it all together. Next up, the Blue Oyster Cult, The Symbol Remains. There's a full review of this record on the channel. The link is in the description. What can I say? First album of new material for almost 20 years, and what a return, as the band have blended together all the elements that made them great over the last 50 years and come up with an absolute classic. Great melodies, superb songwriting, superb musicianship, and those harmonies to die for. Their love for science fiction, old horror movies is still there. In fact, the whole album reads like a set of Stephen King short stories. For me, Symbol is one of the best albums they have ever done. So a complete change of pace for the next album, Cat Stevens' Tea for the Tillerman 2. Cat Stevens went back and reimagined his classic 1970 album, Tea for the Tillerman. On first hearing the news of this album, I thought this is a recipe for disaster. How could you reimagine a classic record? But fair play to the man, fair play to Mr. Stevens, he went and did it. And it all works. All those classic songs came over in a new light. Wild World, Father and Son, Where Do the Children Play? Father and Son, where he combined an early 70s live recording of him doing that song in the Troubadour in LA with his voice now. Father and Son, exactly. If you're a Cat Stevens fan, this is a must. And I really hope that in the next few years we get some new material from Cat Stevens. Tea for the Tillerman 2 I've reviewed, and there will be a link in the description below. So next up, Whoosh, Deep Purple. Deep Purple made a return to albums in 2020 with an absolute beauty. I've not enjoyed a Deep Purple album like this for a long time. Ian Gillan no longer does too many banshee wails, but those days are behind him now. But he's in fine form here. Ian Pace and Roger Glover providing, as you would expect, a wonderful rhythmic backbone. Don Airey shows why he's one of the most respected keyboard players in rock music, and Steve Morse turns in one great guitar solo after another. When the band play together, they really cook, and they get into some great grooves. Top that off with some great songs, and it's well worth a listen. So those are my picks of the year so far, but we still have two more to come, two more waiting in the wings, which I'm really looking forward to. Bruce Springsteen's new record, A Letter to You, which, if the two songs he's put out so far are anything to go by, Ghosts and the title track, is going to be a killer of an album. Last but not least, Albert Bouchard's Imaginos. Albert was part of the Blue Oyster Cult for a long time, as a drummer, a songwriter and a singer. Imaginos is a story or a universe created by Sandy Pearlman. For those who don't know, Sandy was the manager of the Blue Oyster Cult for 22 years and produced their early albums, as well as writing lyrics for the band. The Imaginos story saga is long and very involved, and if I tried to explain it, I'd be here all day. I still don't quite understand it, but I get the gist of it. A lot of it is woven into the lyrics of the band's songs over the years. A version of Imaginos came out in 1988 and it's credited as a Blue Oyster Cult album, but there's loads of session players on it and it's not the full thing. It's kind of been chopped up and messed around with. There is a version, a demo version of Albert's original idea for the album. That's really good, but like I say, it's a demo version and it's kind of a bit ragged in places, but it's well worth a listen. So if you type in Albert Bouchard's demos for Imaginos on YouTube, you'll come up with it. So recently, Albert's gone back into the studio to make the definitive Imaginos album and called it Reimaginos. And this will be sticking much more to Sandy Pearlman's original idea for the album. The album, which I'm really looking forward to, should see the light of day on November the 6th. Now, Albert Bouchard has put out one song, which is a reworking of an old Blue Oyster Cult song. I think it was on their first album. It was called Workshop of the Telescopes. Now, when I first heard this track, I didn't like it at all. But as I played it a few times, it became one of those songs you can't get out of your head. And I'm looking forward to this album. What did they christen it? A bedtime story for the children of the damned. Yep, I'm really looking forward to Imaginos. So, those are my picks of the year, and like I said, a couple more to come. Hope you've enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be doing this for a good while, and hopefully I'll bring you some content that you'll really like. Thanks for listening.